really to everyone, really appreciate the messages, the positive messages that get out throughout the season about our organization, about our players, and about what we're doing in the community. So with that, we'll open it up to your questions.
Hey, what's the story on Frank? What's happening with him?
So he's coming off the NFI list, so he's passed his physical as of this morning. So he will be out on the practice field ready to roll.
Anybody else that's not going to start practice, or anybody else hurt right now besides Tyler?
Yeah, just Tyler is really the only one. I mean, we've got a managed rep count on some guys, but nothing really to speak of at this point.
Can you update us on Tyler at all, where things stand with him?
He's basically just out right now. I mean, he's making good progress, and he's done a great job this offseason getting himself to where he is right now.
Sean, from what you saw from Ed Oliver in his first OTAs and minicamp, what kind of transition does he need to make, and things that he has to get a feel for at this level compared to what he did at the last level?
Yeah, he's a rookie, and this is his first day of practice, of real practice, and it's a journey. So it just takes some time. He'll have to go through really everything that the rookies go through in terms of getting themselves acclimated to the NFL, getting themselves acclimated. There's a jump, there's a gap between major college football even and the NFL. So he's got a long way to go right now.
Sean, you talked just before we all left back in June how you really put an emphasis on team development and the getting to know the guys well, the newcomers. How important is this phase now? Now that you're at training camp in that development phase.
Yeah, you can't say process, right?
Stop myself.
No, it's huge. This is, as we talked as a team last night, this is part of the reason why we go away. Brandon and I have said it over and over again. We believe in going away to camp. We really appreciate what St. John's Fisher means, and the campus and the people and the hospitality that they extend here to us. As it relates to building our team, it's important that we can go away and build some fellowship time off the practice field as much as on the practice field, and come together as a football team. And so, just kind of the gaps in the schedule, if you will, offer us an opportunity to do that, as opposed to being at home where, sometimes there's a little bit of pressure maybe to go home and get to that to-do list at home, if you will. And so whether it's, guys, getting a better feel for each other, staying a little bit longer at the lunch table. I know you guys like hanging out with one another, so that's another reason why we come away to camp.
Coach, coming off of what Cole was dealing with in the spring, is he going to be on like a little bit of a pitch count here in the early going, kind of eased in, or is he just full speed ahead here from the start?
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of, we'll monitor him as well as some of the other players that are coming off of injury in the spring. And there's a few of those guys, so we'll monitor him at this point and see how he progresses through the first couple of days, and then go from there. But overall, it'll be a one practice at a time type of deal.
Brandon, I'm sure when you first got here, you had an idea of where you'd like the team to be. Both of you, where you'd like the team to be at the start of each training camp. So as we start year 3, how close to that original plan of the 2019 is?
I think we're on track. One of the things when we got here was obviously adding depth and quality depth, and I think we've done that since sitting here 2 years ago. The other thing that we feel like we've done is we've addressed the quarterback position and some other areas that we thought needed to improve, and the salary cap, we're in a much stronger position as we go into 2019 and beyond. So that's all been part of the plan Sean and I had when we got here, and we're on track. We're still trending, but we got a lot of work to do.
Brandon, along those lines, the last 10 years in the NFL, on average, 5 to 6 teams a year improve by 4 or more games. Why shouldn't you be expected to be one of those teams this year?
Well, we just expect to go out and and improve, and a lot of it can be the eyeball test. It's not always going to be wins and losses. So to sit here and say we're going to have 2 more wins or 3 more wins or 4, there's so many unknowns into a season. I was just talking on the radio. There's so many things that happen between now and our first game that are unknowns, and we could have injuries happen and have to find players at another position from another team. There's so many things. We sat here 2 years ago. I couldn't have told you then we were trading Sammy Watkins or Ronald Darby. There's just so many unknowns. We'll deal with each day. Sean and his staff will go out there and try and win the day, so to speak, and we'll deal with what happens. But I can't sit here and tell you we're going to have X number of wins this year.
Hey,
Brandon,
Sean,
there seems to be a lot of the offseason discussion, speculation sits on LaShawn McCoy, and everybody looks at what you've added and what his salary cap status is and what you said back in the draft, saying when we roll the ball out, he's going to be the starter. What is his status? Just to repeat it or just to clarify it, because there's a lot of outside noise questioning LaShawn's status on this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's not any inside noise, so outside it is what it is. I think a lot of that comes from nobody playing football. So there's got to be people got jobs to do. A lot of you guys. So that's one of the topics. It's exactly what you said. When Sean and Brian Daboll roll the ball out, LaShawn's going to be the first running back to touch the ball, and that's the way we see it. We have added, as I talked, we've added depth, we've added competition at running back and a lot of other spots, but we anticipate that he's handled the challenge all through the spring. I think he sees the competition, and he hasn't shown that he's afraid of it or he's got a problem with it, so that's where it sits.
Sean, is it a concern that last year, he's 31 years old now, Sean, and he was 3.2 per carry. Running backs, they hit that proverbial wall. Is there a concern with LaShawn, at least physically, that maybe he's a player in decline?
And we look at everything, and that's what the offseason is for. As we go back and do a self-scout in an evaluation of our football team, in this case the running back position, Sal, we try and ask ourselves, in particular when the numbers aren't where they need to be, why? And we do a thorough research, do some research in terms of finding the reason, drilling down as to the reason. And listen, it's never all one guy. And in this case, there was some runs he'd like to have back, and I think he would tell you the same. But there's a lot of other reasons for it, and you saw some of which we addressed this offseason with the offensive line. And so, we're encouraged at this point as to where he is and the competition we're going to see not only at the running back position, but the offensive line position as well.
To piggyback on that thing, because you just brought it up, is it uncomfortable to come into camp with an offensive line that's so uncertain at this point? You've got maybe all 5 positions, maybe 4 positions that are up for grabs.
Right, and that's somewhat of Brandon's answer to the earlier question here about unknowns and crystal ball. Would we like to have more continuity? Yes. That's the part of building it up the right way, where you have to add players and you look at teams who have won, in particular in our division, and there's been a ton of continuity, and so there's strength in that, where in that staying power, where guys know where you start in the first day in the install is not, hey, this is how you get in your stance, and I'm being extreme with that example, but that is one of our challenges right now, is the lack of continuity on the offensive side, and we understand that.
Is there a way you can gauge how long that might take, particularly in terms of the offensive line? I mean, we've seen in the past here, you make a couple of changes and there can be some issues with cohesion. And you talked about the challenge of that all this new talent presents. Do you have a kind of a time frame that you expect things to be running at a top level? Yeah,
the sooner the better. It's when you look at the complexion of our team, I would say defensively we have more continuity than we have offensively at this point in time, and that's okay. So we have to handle it a little bit different, and so offensively we're going to try and find it as soon as we can, but also be respectful of the position battles that are going on, and giving everyone ample opportunity to show us what they've got, and so we'll handle it accordingly. But to your point, we'd like to find it as quickly as possible.
Sean, a year ago you watched Josh Allen in a different light, I would assume, because of his status coming in where he was in the depth chart, the quarterback plan as it was unfolding. Now it's entirely different. How does that change the way you either watch him and what you're kind of looking for in terms of your thought process a year later? Like what will it feel like down there?
Yeah, we feel what it'll feel like, complexion-wise, again, is different than last year. With respect to the quarterback position, more clarity around who our quarterback is, obviously, and and feeling good about also where Matt is at this point. Interested to see how Tyree progresses through this camp and preseason. So really, it's nice to have a player in his second year that you feel good about, that now we can talk more about educating Josh on the game, on the NFL game and situational football. And so it's not as much about, answering some of the unknowns as much as it is developing him as an overall and complete football player at this point.
Both of you, fair to say, higher expectations.
For Josh? Yeah, I mean, I think you would like to see him trending, and I think we saw that in the spring. Now, that has to obviously translate when we're playing against other teams, but I think you saw him, distribute the ball, not try and take as many, downfield shots. We want him to be aggressive, but we also want him, when the defense tells you to chuck it down and get it to 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3, or, whatever, we want him to take those opportunities too. And I think you guys were at practice, you saw the command, the leadership. This is his team. That's the biggest thing that I see from a year ago, Vic, is it wasn't his team at that point. He was fighting for a spot. Now, everyone in this, we got 91, the other 90 guys know that this is Josh Allen's team, as the quarterback.
Were you surprised by the Bush retirement, and what does Coleman bring to the table that made you sign him?
Raphael let us know in the middle of the summer that he was considering it, and so Sean and I had several conversations with him through the process. It's, you don't really want to get into talking people out of, retiring in football. It's, so we worked through it, gave him time for he and his family to make a solid decision. At that time, we were also, talking, to Kurt if this happened that, we would make that move. So we were ready, and we kind of gave Raphael hey, we need to know by this date, and, we wish him the best. Not everybody knows when their time is, but I think he knew that he was done with football. And Kurt, I'll let Sean talk about him in a minute, but Kurt's a guy that obviously he's very familiar with. I'm familiar with. We brought him in 2015, and he had a career year and was a big part of the defense and the full success that we had in Carolina. He had 7 picks and 2 more in the playoffs. He started 80-some games, so he'll bring a lot of veteran savvy. You guys will get to know him. He's a hard-nosed player, but he's very smart, and he's a great fit for our team and for this defense. And Sean, you can talk a little more.
Well, you did a really good job right there.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around Kurt just a few more years maybe than Brandon, and what I saw on tape years ago when I was out at Ohio State on a scouting trip is what we still see to this day, or we've seen to this point. I was out years ago, I think it was Malcolm Jenkins who was coming out at the time, and Kurt kept jumping off the tape, and it caused me to ask one of their staffers who this player was. He was I think a junior at the time. So fast forward a year later, and we're in Philadelphia. I'm in Philadelphia with Andy Reid, and we get to the 6th or 7th round there, and Andy said, "Who do you like?" And so, that was one of the better decisions I've ever made, I think. Just with respect to who he is as a person, who he is as a player, and that's one of the joys of coaching, is to have at least a small hand in a player's development, both on and off the field. And I remember sitting in a restaurant in Carolina when we brought him down on a free agent visit, and we're sitting there having bagel sandwiches. It wasn't exactly a fancy free agent courting, really, but it turned into, again, one of I thought our best signings of that off season, as Brandon mentioned.
Josh, the defense last year finished number 2 overall. What is the challenge in maintaining such a high level of consistency going into this year? And also, now that these guys are with you and Leslie, really for 3 straight years, how much more can you really do and open it up even more so?
Yeah, each year is different, Sal, as you know. That said, we've got to continue to build the foundation, but also take steps to improve what we do and how we do it. And a lot of that I'm looking for is a little bit more of an edge to our defense. And there's obviously some areas we need to improve on from last year, but this is a different team. This is a different defense. And that continuity, to your point, should work to our advantage in terms of cohesion, as was mentioned earlier, and communication.
So,
Brandon, what did Mitch Morse come onto your radar? How big of a get is that
So, this time of year, we actually do what we call, a top 5, projection at each position. If right now, if free agency had started going into the season. So a year ago, our scouts put together in their mind, and he was in that top 5, of center position. So that lets us know and lets my staff, Joe Shane, Dan Morgan, and that crew start keeping an eye on these guys. We're watching a lot of college, but we're still keeping an eye. So we tracked him through the year, and obviously that picks up, after the season. And, he's, Sean will talk about it. The first signing that we made here re-signing was Eric Wood, 2 years ago in the preseason. And that shows you the value that we thought, the importance, of the leadership, and Mitch has done everything. He had the unfortunate setback with the injury, but we saw what a pro he was this spring in how he handled it and worked his way back.
Sean, let's take 2 more questions, please.
Did you get what you needed there?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would just say, look, he sets the table. He's the quarterback of the offense, other than the main quarterback. And quiet teams, we've mentioned the word communication a couple times this morning, and quiet teams don't win. And we need a guy that can get everybody on the same page, setting the table, as I already mentioned, and making sure that we're all on the same sheet of music, so to speak.
Hey, Sean, you had mentioned earlier about the start of the press conference about the value of going away.
Yeah.
Here, and I know there's been questions about the future here, given the trend in the NFL, given the new upgrades and facilities at Orchard Park, and I think you were quoted as saying it's kind of an ongoing decision, the degree to which you do go away in the preseason. Can you expand more on that and how you evaluate maybe training camp into the future? Because a lot of people have questions about that.
Yeah, well, I'll just speak on for where we are right now on it, for where Brandon and I are on it, is look, there's value to me. The value outweighs the cost in terms of going away. So, to me as a group, let's put it this way, and I'll draw this analogy where, as a family, I think you learn a lot about your family when you go on road trips, right? I remember being packed into that station wagon years ago on that 20-some-hour drive from Pennsylvania to Iowa to see my relatives, and I think we learned a lot about our family on that trip. No different here. We're a family, and I believe you learn something from these unique experiences that brings you together and brings you closer as a football team. So that's where I stand right now on it.
Sean, new center, new tight ends, new receivers, new running backs. How tough do you think it is for a second-year quarterback to kind of absorb all that and kind of make it work in the regular season?
Yeah, that's part of our growth and where we are. That's a necessary part of our off season. We obviously weren't good enough on in a couple of phases last year, and on the offensive side of the ball, to your point, and so that's, I give Brandon credit for bringing players in that we feel can help us. That remains to be seen. So there's a lot of challenges right now, and the great part about it is we're about to practice for the first time and get a good feel, at least for the first practice, of what we got.
You got some guys.
Thanks, guys.
Sean, real quick.